They said I should be grateful just to have a place to stay. Funny. I remember when this place didn't even exist, not until I sold everything I owned to help my son buy it. But years pass, memories fade, and gratitude turns into entitlement. Now, I sit at a table I paid for, eating food I bought, while my son's wife glares at me like I'm stealing air that isn't mine. The night she called me a burden, something inside me broke. But not the way she hoped. Because when people mistake kindness for weakness, they forget that even the softest voice can carry the heaviest truth. And that night, I decided to give her a burden, one she could never carry. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the Old Folks channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. The old wooden gate creaked as I pushed it open, its sound echoing through the quiet evening. The house stood tall and modern, cold glass and steel replacing the warmth I once dreamed of. My son greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, while his wife, Clara, lingered by the door, her lips tight, her gaze distant. The scent of dinner drifted out, but it wasn't welcoming, it felt forced, like everything else. I carried a small suitcase, all that was left of a lifetime's worth of giving. You shouldn't have bothered bringing much, Clara said flatly, turning before I could answer. My son tried to ease the moment, but his voice trembled. Mom, we're just adjusting. I smiled softly, pretending not to notice how she never called me mother. As I stepped inside, the air felt heavier, and I wondered, not for the first time, if this house had room for me at all. The silent corners. Days passed, quiet but sharp. Every sound seemed louder, the clatter of dishes, the hum of whispers that stopped when I entered the room. My footsteps echoed down the hallway like an unwelcome reminder that I was still there. I tried to help, folding laundry, cooking a meal, but Clara would gently take over, saying, "It's fine, you should rest." Rest, a word that felt more like stay out of the way. At dinner, I'd sit quietly, watching them talk about things I didn't understand, vacations, promotions, restaurants. My world, once full of laughter and voices, now felt like wallpaper, unseen but still holding everything together. I noticed how Clara placed only 2 plates first, then added mine last, almost as an afterthought. I told myself it was nothing, but deep down, a whisper grew, "You don't belong here anymore." The whisper in the walls. One night, I woke to voices, muffled, sharp, traveling through the thin walls. My son's voice was tired, low, trying to calm her. Clara's was clear, slicing the silence. "She's becoming a burden, James. We can't live like this forever." Those words hit harder than any slap. My breath caught. I pressed my palm against the wall, feeling the vibration of her anger. My son's silence was worse than her cruelty, it confirmed everything. The night felt colder suddenly. The ticking clock in my room grew louder with every second, mocking the stillness. I lay back, eyes open, staring at the ceiling where shadows swam. A burden, that's what I had become. But a strange calm spread through me. Because burdens, when dropped, can also crash. And I wasn't done yet. The morning light fell across an old family photo I kept in my suitcase, my son, only 8 years old, smiling beside me in front of our first house. I traced his little face with trembling fingers. Back then, I worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. His shoes, his books, every dream he ever had, I paid for it with my bones and breath. Clara would never know those nights I stayed awake sewing by candlelight so he'd never go hungry. I whispered to the picture, "You forgot, didn't you, my boy?" The smile in the photo didn't answer. But in the silence of the room, something inside me shifted, a memory turning into something colder. And I decided then, forgetting has its price. The dinner of pretenses. That night, dinner was served with the same dull routine, glass plates, wine glasses, no laughter. Clara talked about renovations and vacations, her voice dripping with pride. I only listened. My son nodded along, his hand resting on hers, eyes blank. When I offered to say grace, Clara sighed. "It's fine, Mother. We've moved past that." Her tone stabbed deeper than her words. I lowered my hands, feeling my heart slow, steady, silent, unreadable. I smiled faintly. Of course, dear. Some things do change. But inside, my memories were waking, of things I had built that still bore my name. The bank statement. Later that night, I opened my old purse. Inside, a folder worn thin with age. Receipts, documents, papers long forgotten. The deed to their home. My name. My payments. My sacrifices in ink. I'd kept every proof, not out of pride, but out of habit. And now, those papers whispered like ghosts. A burden, she called me. But what would she say when she realized I carried the very weight that held their world together? The thought settled like the storm waiting for the right wind to break. A few days later, Clara's friends came for lunch. They laughed, loud and sharp, perfume thick in the air. I served tea quietly, like a shadow. One of them smiled at me and said, "Oh, you're James' mother. How lovely you still stay with them." Before I could answer, Clara interrupted, "Just for a while. She's helping around the house." Their polite laughter was the kind that hurt. My son said nothing. I placed the teapot down gently, smiled, and walked away, but every step burned. Helping around the house, was I? They had no idea whose name was written beneath the roof above their heads. The quiet afternoon. That evening, the laughter from earlier still rang in my ears. I sat by the window, watching the world turn gold under the sunset. A strange mix of peace and pain washed through me. I could leave, I thought. Pack my things, vanish, and let them live in their illusion. But then I remembered my late husband, how we built everything with scraped hands and tired hearts. I remembered my son's small hand clutching mine, saying, "One day, I'll take care of you, Mama." The promise echoed, fragile, almost mocking. No. I wouldn't leave. Not yet. He needed to remember. The call from the lawyer. That night, I made a call. My lawyer, Mr. Grant, was old now, his voice cracked with age but still sharp. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "you're asking to move the property title again?" "Yes," I replied softly. "Back to my own name as it was." He paused. "Are you certain? It'll create waves." "Sometimes," I said, "waves are the only way to wash away dirt." He understood. He always did. And with that, the quiet revenge began. 3 days later, an envelope arrived, official, sealed, heavy with meaning. My son collected the mail as usual, but this one bore my name. I watched his eyes linger on it, confusion flickering. "What's that, Mom?" "Just old business," I smiled. But when I took it from his hand, I saw Clara watching, curiosity turning quickly into suspicion. The air grew tight. She didn't like secrets she couldn't control. The confrontation. Later that evening, Clara came to my room. "I saw the envelope," she said. "You're not doing anything that affects this house, are you?" Her tone was sweet, but her eyes weren't. I looked up from my knitting, calm as ever. "This house," I said softly. "My dear, this house has always been mine." For the first time, she blinked, caught off guard. "Don't play games," she whispered. "Oh, I never do," I said, meeting her gaze. "But you might want to read the fine print before you call someone a burden." Her breath hitched, and she left without another word. The storm brewing. That night, thunder rolled outside. I sat by the window, the rain tapping softly on the glass. My son hadn't come to speak to me, silence again, his cowardice protecting her comfort. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. The storm outside felt like an omen, cleansing, violent, necessary. Sometimes the only way to teach gratitude is through loss. Dinner that night was quiet, too quiet. Clara's eyes darted between me and my son. My hands rested on the table, folded neatly. Then I placed the envelope beside my plate. "James," I said softly, "you should read this." He hesitated. "Mom, what is?" It's the truth, I interrupted gently. He opened it. His eyes widened, scanning the document, the deed, the receipts, the proof. His fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the plate. Clara froze, pale as porcelain. The words that broke the silence. You mean, my son stammered, you paid for all this? The house? Every brick, every window, I said calmly. When your father died, this was meant to be yours. But you forgot who built it first. Clara's lips trembled. That doesn't mean. I raised a hand. It means you should think twice before calling someone a burden. Because some burdens carry you. The room went silent. Only the rain answered us. The exit. I stood slowly, my chair scraping the floor. I'll be staying elsewhere, I said. The house will be transferred back soon. I'll send for my things. My son looked torn, reaching out. Mom, wait. But I smiled, not with bitterness, but finality. No, James. It's your turn to remember. And I walked out, leaving the echoes of my footsteps behind like thunder. They said the house felt colder after I left. My son called a few times, I didn't answer. The quiet became their company. Clara avoided the dining room, as if the walls whispered my name. The house that once rejected me now refused to comfort them. And somewhere, deep inside, guilt had found its way in. The newspaper. Weeks later, Clara found my name in the newspaper, the foundation I started for widowed mothers. The same savings I took from that house had turned into something greater. She used the money for this, she whispered. My son stared at the article, tears welling. She always said giving is the only weight worth carrying. For once, Clara said nothing. The visit. One morning, there was a knock at my small new home, quiet, surrounded by flowers. I opened the door, and there he was. James. His eyes were red, but softer than before. Mom, he said quietly. I remember now. And behind him, Clara stood, silent, humbled, holding a bouquet. Sometimes, loss is the only language that teaches love. They stepped into my home, smaller, simpler, but warm. The air smelled of tea and lilies. Clara looked around, her face full of quiet shame. It's beautiful, she said softly. Yes, I answered. Peace doesn't need space, just sincerity. James nodded, eyes glistening. We're sorry, Mom. Truly. For the first time in years, I believed him. The confession. Clara hesitated, then whispered, I was wrong. I thought you were, in the way. I looked at her, the woman who once saw me as a burden now trembling before me. Sometimes, I said, we only value what we think we've lost. Her tears fell quietly. Can we start over? I smiled faintly. We already have. The embrace. My son took my hand. Thank you for never giving up on me. I squeezed his fingers gently. Mothers never do. We just wait until our children remember. And as the afternoon sun filled the room, I realized forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but it transforms it. And that's enough. The garden outside had bloomed again. Roses, just like the ones my husband planted decades ago. I knelt beside them, pruning carefully. My son came out, placing a hand on my shoulder. You did all this? I smiled. Everything beautiful starts small, but only grows with care. He understood. The conversation. Later, over tea, he asked quietly, were you ever angry at me? I thought for a moment. No. Just disappointed that you forgot who you came from. He lowered his head. I won't forget again. I know, I said. You've already remembered. The look back. That night, as I left, I turned to see them waving from the porch, together, at peace. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like home again, not because I stayed, but because they learned what it truly meant to keep one. Before I left for my foundation work abroad, I wrote a letter to my son and Clara. "Don't fear burdens," it read. "They make us strong. Just make sure you're carrying the right ones." The farewell. I left early morning, the sunrise painting gold across my path. My heart was lighter, my soul quieter. Sometimes justice isn't loud, it's gentle, like peace earned after pain. The last thought. As the train pulled away, I watched the horizon blur and whispered, "He remembered." And that was enough. Because love, once forgotten, can always be carried again, if the lesson was heavy enough to last a lifetime. Weeks later, they invited me to dinner, same house, but this time, Clara set 3 plates first. The gesture made my eyes sting. "You remembered," I said softly. She smiled nervously. "We're learning." It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The conversation. We talked, really talked. About memories, my husband, the early years. Laughter returned slowly, like a shy guest. James looked lighter, Clara more human. And for a moment, I forgot the pain. Because even broken families can heal, if someone dares to hold the first piece. The toast. When the meal ended, I raised my glass. "To burdens," I said with a smile. They looked confused. "Some," I continued, "are meant to be carried together." And this time, we all drank. People think burdens are things we carry, debts, responsibilities, mistakes. But sometimes, the real burden is the truth we chose to ignore. I was called useless in the very home I built with my bare hands. But I learned that dignity doesn't need walls to protect it, only courage to defend it. And while they sit in that house built on shame, I sit under the same sky, lighter than ever. Because forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. And some burdens are best left for those who earned them.